Sister-in-law blamed me for having an emergency C-section due to medical complications, claiming my inactivity was the real issue. I, 28F, had my son Kaisen 4 months ago. At 22 weeks I was diagnosed with partial placenta previa and we were hoping and praying it would resolve, but at 28 weeks I was told I have complete placenta previa. This news hurt because I had a birth plan, but my doctor still closely monitored it even though he made it clear that there might be less chance of resolving it, and might have a C-section. At 35 weeks I had heavy bleeding, so I delivered my beautiful baby boy through an emergency C-section. My son was in the NICU for 2 weeks before we got to go home. 2 weeks ago there was a family party at my Mills house. I was sitting in the ladies when KY started crying. So I breastfed him while chatting. Nobody had a problem with that. Then after that I handed him to my Sil since she wanted to play with him. While he was holding him she said something, so they started talking about my Sil's labor and she said it was a breeze. Then I said, "Aw, that's nice, I hope to have a natural with my second someday." Then she said a natural birth needs preparation during the whole pregnancy. Then she went on to say you never worked out or got active much. So I told her it was because of the placenta previa situation. This woman literally said that's not an excuse though. I had rowed ligament pain and I still managed to keep active. I told her I was kept on bed rest half my pregnancy and had too many hospital visits, so I didn't want to do anything to risk putting myself in danger. Then she said your body can feel the nerves and it reads accordingly. You should have relaxed and let nature take its course. That's how natural births work. The C-section was avoidable. I told her to F herself and took my baby out her arms and went to my hubby. We left after. Apparently she told anyone who asked where I am got sensitive and left the party. After a few days she asked to see Kaisen and I said I'm not comfortable being around her at the moment. She accused me of weaponizing my son and using him to hurt her. Note, whole pregnancy she kept on giving unsolicited advice on how to fix the placenta previa, and I feel like she thinks if I had listened to her I would have had Kaisen naturally. I felt sad for a few weeks after birth cause my birth plan didn't go how I wanted it to. These feelings just feel like they resurfaced tbh. I thought I was okay. Ada for grabbing him and not agreeing to visit her. Update 1. So when I told my husband about what he did, I didn't like his reaction. I told him exactly what happens and he said I don't want to interfere in women arguments, babe. I then told him that he can at least ask his sister to be sensitive about my experience, and he said, "Why don't you talk to my mom about it so she sits you two down and have a mature discussion?" My husband knows Sil is the apple of my Mills eye, so she would side with her. There has never been a need for my Mill to pick sides, but if there ever was we all know who he would. I told him that I would feel more comfortable if he is there. But he said it's a birth thing so women should discuss it. I mentioned in a comment on the original post that my hubby suggested therapy. He feels like the only reason I was offended by Sil is because I have not gotten over the fact that I had an emergency C-section. I mean he is right, but I just really want him to talk to his sister. Is that so wrong? I want his support and for him to make things clear to her. If you are wondering whether I have support system like family, then no I don't. My parents are in a different country and I live in my husband's home country. Update 2. The love and support you gave me was more than appreciated and it had me the courage to do what I did today. I saw some comments saying I named my son a tragedy. My husband and I agreed that I would pick the first name and he would pick the middle name so we both get to name him. If you don't like the name then I don't know how to help you with that. Besides I did not want his first name on the post so I used his other name Kaisen. I now realize that I could have just used a fake name. Today a lot happened. I talked to my Sil and Mill and I also talked to my husband. It went terrible actually, that is an understatement to what happened today. My talk with Sil and Mill took place at my Mill's house at around 10 a.m. I got there and they were already there. I expected my hubby to have gone with me but he didn't. My Sil got to the point and asked me why I was so upset at her. I reminded her all that she said to me and she said, "Was I wrong though? You are just offended that I spoke the truth." I remembered all the advice I got from your comments and I told her what I had learned about placenta previa and her misinformation. I also told her about the difference between round ligament pain and placenta previa and what I went through. She rolled her eyes and said that's what doctors want to do so they make money off of C-sections. My Mill the whole time sat there defending her and saying I shouldn't take it to heart while Sil still stood on all she said. Sil called me incompetent and sensitive so I said some colorful words and was walking out. BTW I was baby wearing. She grabbed my arm and pulled me telling me she isn't done talking and that I am walking away with her nephew. I told her to let me go or I'll get her arrested for handling me in that manner so she let go. I told them when they are ready to behave like adults then they will see Kaisen. I was so scared of standing up for myself but I did it. My hands were shaking lol. I got home and hubby wasn't there so I got KY to take a nap and called my dad. I spilled everything to him and he was furious. He told me to either move out or fly back home. I told him I have to talk to hubby first and I will tell them how things go. When hubby got home later in the afternoon I was breastfeeding. He came into the living room and asked how the meeting went. I could tell he had a sour mood. I told him it went bad and he told me, "Oh I know." He told me that his mother is so hurt by my disrespect. I told him how they behaved and he told me that I am trying to say his mother is a liar. So basically his mom called and told him I was screaming and shouting at them. She told him I was hysterical and even rattled KY up. Sil backed Mill up so it was like a tag team. I explained what actually happened and he said all this drama wouldn't be happening if I didn't overreact to a few comments made at the party. I was shocked. I told him I thought he was supposed to defend me and he said he can't ruin the relationship with his family because of my insecurities. I told him that I will leave with my son and go to people who actually care about me and that my dad will book my flight. I walked away with Kaisen and he grabbed my arm and said his son goes nowhere. He told me he was tired of my continuous complaints about his family. He said if I was still hurt by those comments then maybe I'm the problem and need to look into fixing it. He brought up a few memories I don't want to mention but just past experiences with his family. At this point it was getting loud and KY was crying so I told hubby to relax. He didn't, let's just say the living room wall understood he was angry. So I told him I want to go somewhere I feel safe. I left with KY and we are currently in a hotel. I want to move to another city, and start life fresh there. I can request for a transfer. My husband expresses himself audibly when angry so what happened after that was so unusual and a shock. He has called me asking me to come home and that he was just frustrated. He know this account and he know about the posts, so he saw the comments that I got. He sent a message about how I let strangers love the internet get into my head and convince me against my family. He said he felt torn between supporting his sister and supporting me and I can't blame him for not knowing which side to take. I told him I don't want KY to grow up in such an environment and stopped replying. I don't know if I was dramatic or I did too much. I still don't understand why he got so angry and why he reacted that way. I also want to know why his mom and sister lied to him. I don't know, there's a lot of uncertainty right now but KY and I are safe. I will talk to a lawyer about the next steps to take. I feel at peace. I have gone through so much in my 5 years of marriage. I now want to raise my son in a healthy environment. Update 3. Happy, belated, Father's Day to all the wonderful dads out there, biological or not, kids or not, you are all amazing. So the police took my statement and I showed them the bruising. They opened a file for my case. They talked to my husband and still advising them to keep their distance. I want to apply for a protection order so they don't come near Kaisen and I. My Sil, hubby and Mill have not contacted me since their talk with the cops. As for our marriage it's definitely over. Since I am a foreigner I can't just pack and leave, especially since we have a child together. I would need his father's consent to leave the country and we all know he will not give permission for that. I talked to a lawyer about my options and the laws around DV, travel, and custody. Legal action is going to take time. The protection order could take a few weeks. Since I want to leave and take away his parental rights, I have to prove DV and that he is unfit and can potentially hurt Kaisen. Kaisen also needs a passport. The whole legal process will take time, months if we are speaking. If my husband does contest anything then it will take even longer. I was told it could 6 months or more to fully sort out the custody and permission to leave the country with baby KY. It's not going to be fast but I'm willing to have the patience for this if it means safety for my son, and good news is my parents and brothers are flying over. They will arrive end of this week. So yeah, yesterday that was all I did. Met the police and a lawyer, also moved to live with a friend of mine and her husband. My dad and brothers said they want to talk to my husband, soon to be ex, about men stuff. I don't think that's a good idea lol. The stress and everything of this has made my milk supply drop significantly. In my first post I mentioned in the comments that it is low but it has gotten worse. I really want to be able to fully feed my baby and TR so hard to be hydrated and eat well. I need sleep. KY has also been very fussy. This update might be all over the place but I made progress. Hopefully in a few months' time I will be giving a great update from my parents' house. I didn't do a lot but there's so much to do, but it's one step at a time. Update 4. I've been staying at my friend's place with Kaisen, and my parents and brothers arrived 2 days ago. I ugly cried at the airport the minute I saw my mom. It felt like I'd been holding a breath for months and finally let it out. My parents basically went into Project Rescue mode. Mom took over baby duty, Dad went straight into organizing legal docs, and my brothers took charge of making sure the house felt like a fortress. If you've ever seen a family of sleep-deprived, slightly feral people who have crossed an ocean to protect you, that was us for the last 48 hours. I honestly don't know how I survived without them here. The legal wheels are grinding, slowly but steadily. My lawyer, who is a total rock star, told me that my husband's lawyer actually reached out for a mutual agreement conversation. I was super wary, because last I'd heard from him were angry texts about destroying the family, and listening to the internet. My lawyer prepped me for all possible outcomes. We could be facing months of paperwork minutia war, or, if he gets spooked, he could just ask for visitation and try to let things die down. But then came the curveball. My husband actually showed up at my friend's house. He didn't pound on the door or cause a scene. He just sat on the curb for almost an hour. My friend's husband watched him from the window while my dad stood in the hallway on the phone with the police, in case it escalated. When my dad finally stepped out to say something, my husband just asked, almost pleaded, if he could talk to me. We did, but only in the presence of my dad, my friend's husband, and my lawyer, on speakerphone. And he cried. For the first time since all this started, he looked genuinely broken. He apologized for not supporting me after Kaisen's birth, for letting his mom and sister treat me horribly, for not realizing how violent things had felt in our house. He said he contacted a therapist and had 2 sessions already, and he said he didn't want to fight for custody, just for visitation. But then he pivoted and asked if we agreed to family counseling. and if I could forgive his family, could we try again? I flat out said no. That trust was gone, burned to ashes. He started talking about how his mom and sister have been blowing up his phone, telling him that he's ruining the family by letting a woman leave with his only son. Apparently my Mill and Sil have gone on some sort of sympathy campaign through the entire extended family, telling everyone that I'm unstable, I fled with the baby, and that my family was threatening violence. A cousin of my husband's even tried to show up at my friend's house, but my lawyer and the police shut that down fast. My lawyer is building a pretty hefty packet of evidence for the protection order, the messages, the extended family campaign, even an unhinged voicemail my Sil left, where she threatened to do everything in her power to make sure Kaisen knows where he belongs. Meanwhile, I had my first real breakdown in front of my mom. Hit the floor, couldn't breathe, felt like I'd failed everyone breakdown. She wrapped her arms around me and just let me cry. If you ever feel weak for breaking down, I swear there's magic in letting someone else carry you for a bit. Afterwards, she told me that standing up for myself and Kaisen makes her proud, and that moving forward, no matter how it plays out, we'll find peace. And there's always an and. Kaisen's passport application is officially filed. The consulate appointment was a nerve-wracking nightmare because I kept imagining my husband or his family barging in, but it's done. As long as the court doesn't intervene after all the evidence of abuse and intimidation, we'll have the paperwork in less than 3 months. Also, I know a lot of people were worried about my breastfeeding supply due to stress. My mom has been an absolute lactation wizard. Teas, massages, late-night reminders to eat something other than coffee and cereal. I started producing a bit more. Enough that with pumped milk and formula, Kaisen is content, less fussy. I finally slept 4 hours in a row for the first time since this all started. The exhaustion is bone deep, but hope creeps in with every uninterrupted chunk of sleep. This afternoon, I got a call from my lawyer. The temporary protection order is in effect, which means unless there is a supervised, court-ordered meeting, my husband and his family can't come near me or Kaisen for now. Tonight, with my family all under one roof, I actually felt safe for the first time in months. So, what's new? An apology that still can't fix what's broken, an in-person confrontation that felt less like closure and more like opening old wounds, a family that's gone full mama and Papa Bear, a legal process that's moving, and, in tiny moments, joy and peace. I honestly don't know what's next. It could be calm or chaos, more paperwork, or maybe a day when I can walk outside and just feel normal. But I finally believe we'll get there. Update 5. I want to start by saying, to everyone who reached out when my last update went up, you cannot imagine how much it meant. The DMs, the stories about your own absolute disasters turned happy endings, even the make sure you drink a glass of water reminders. Life is still wild, but for the first time in forever I feel like I'm steering the ship and not just strapped onto the mast in a hurricane. So, buckle up because the past 2 weeks have been surreal. Let's start with the legal roller coaster. The interim protection order was served with absolutely zero drama. To my shock, maybe someone finally convinced my Mill that showing up weeping in a nightgown at my window wouldn't win her custody of a baby she's barely held. My lawyer called the courthouse unusually efficient, which, apparently, is lawyer speak for the judge read your Sil's unhinged voicemails and didn't want that energy anywhere near his docket. My husband texted asking if I'd join him for a supervised mediation session at the courthouse. For the first time, he brought an actual professional interpreter, so his apologies couldn't hide behind language or miscommunications. The mediator asked what each of us wanted. I said, aloud and for the record, above all else I want Kaisen to grow up feeling safe and unconditionally loved. In these present circumstances, that can only happen without your family's input. I expected pushback, or maybe that same broken face apology tour as before, but my husband deflated. He barely spoke except to say, if it's really over, I want to see Kaisen every other weekend. My lawyer countered, she is actually the reigning queen of boundaries, that all visitation would be in a state trauma center, supervised by a third party, while the protection order is active. He agreed. No drama. I almost cried with relief and confusion. And then, out of nowhere, my once silent Mill started sending postcards. Actual, snail mail, pastel floral, Bible verse on the front postcards. 3 in 1 week. She called me lost and troubled. She spelled Kaisen incorrectly all 3 times, by the way, and finished each card invoking Jesus, the Prince of Peace, who does not condone bitter women. My brothers laughed until they cried, then tacked them next to the coffee maker with a sign, do not drink the Mill Kool-Aid. I wanted to burn them, but honestly, nothing scared me less than aggressive calligraphy from 2 countries ago. And then, the family court curveball. My Sil, frustrated at being cut out entirely and, as best as we can tell, perhaps threatened by the fact that people in her social circle were actually talking about the protection order, filed a report with family services that I was emotionally unwell, neglectful, and allowing my foreign family to coerce her sweet nephew. Yes. She claimed my family kidnapped Kaisen. The investigator came by with 2 social workers, actual angels disguised as softly competent women who have seen every flavor of family horror. They checked Kaisen, chubby, happy, cleaner than most 4-month-olds at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, nursing peacefully, and told me, candidly, that this is the single most common power play they see after protection orders. They saw right through it. Case closed 2 days later. My Sil, presumably enraged, posted a rant about me on Facebook. My mother, who hasn't used social media since Farmville 2011, somehow saw it and commented, "If you ever want to meet a strong woman, start with your own mirror." The post came down inside an hour. I have never loved her more. Amid all the insanity, there have been subtle miracles. Kaisen laughed for the first time. Real, shaking, eyes crinkled laughter at the sound of my dad sneezing. I cried for half an hour after, feeling like joy was possible again. My milk supply, with the constant presence and patience of my mom, is up. Sometimes another letdown hits and I catch myself grinning. One problem conquered. My friend, whose home I'm still technically camping in with my parents, set up a living room spa night. 3 adults roasted me for my attempt at a face mask that made me look like Darth Vader, but I woke up the next morning with, yes, actual hope. But none of this prepared me for yesterday. Because, after all that, I got the call. The consulate finished processing Kaisen's passport, 3 weeks ahead of schedule. There's one final legal hearing to make sure all our documentation is flawless, but, barring surprises from the ex's family, we're cleared to travel as soon as the final custody order is signed, which at the current pace should be late next month. I've started packing. How do you fit 5 years, 1 heartbreak, your baby's first blanket, and 17 postcards from a woman who spells your child's name Kaisen into 2 suitcases? I'm not sure, but I'm going to try. We're planning the move. My parents have rented a tiny house close to theirs for me and Kaisen, someplace peaceful, with a fenced garden and an actual working coffee machine. My brothers joke they're setting up a 6 aunties, no Mills welcome home party. For the first time, I daydream about what I want for us instead of what I'm running from. Am I exhausted? Beyond. Is it over? Not quite. But every day, I feel lighter. The bruises faded, the protection order holds, my circle is tight, and Kaisen's laugh fills the rooms. To anyone reading this thinking you'll never be safe, or never be heard, you will. It takes a team sometimes, and you may lose more than you imagined, but the peace on the other side is real. Next time I update, fingers crossed, it will be from home, my home. And if you're wondering, yes, the first thing I'm doing when I land is putting away every miracle solution for placenta previa forever. Update 6. Getting here was a fever dream. Pulling out of my friend's driveway that last morning, my suitcase is bulging with every scrap of important life and Kaisen's impossibly small clothes, my hands shaking, parents blurry-eyed from packing all night. It felt like I was still bracing for a trapdoor to swing open, to be hauled back by some technicality or orchestrated drama. For once, the only drama was the airport security's confusion at the amount of breast pump parts in my carry-on. I suppose they've seen weirder, but the very serious guard blinking at a rainbow assortment of flanges did feel like a weirdly perfect send-off. The absolute last hurdle was the final custody hearing, scheduled the week before our flight. I've been preparing for it like a battle, nightmare scenarios of Mill or Sil appearing with evidence, the possibility of my, now ex-husband wavering on visitation out of nowhere. But the universe, or whatever bureaucratic spirit presides over family court, must have finally decided I'd had enough. My ex showed up, quietly signed the last documents, and didn't even try for expanded visitation. The last thing he said, in the echoey corridor outside the judge's chambers, was that he'd appreciate photos of Kaisen as he grew. I nodded and walked away, somehow both lighter and emptier in the same moment. Sil, for her part, didn't show. Reports from acquaintances say she started attending wellness circles locally and ranting about toxic in-laws stealing children from their birth culture. Every few days I get a new friend request, fake Facebooks with stock photos and hints of her brand of passive-aggressive concern. My dad sets them to auto-block, and I refuse to give them more headspace than an errant mosquito. Mill's final flourish was a package that arrived the same week, a manila envelope stuffed with prayer cards, 1 crumpled baby outfit, and an unsigned card. "May the Lord guide you out of your confusion," my mother, in the world's gentlest but firmest voice, asked if I wanted to burn everything as some kind of ritual. We laughed so hard that Kaisen startled, then gave us the gummy half-smile he saves for moments of absolute chaos. The flight home with a baby, honestly, I deserve a medal, or at least a feature in one of those traveling mom hacks TikToks. My seatmates were saints, the flight crew smuggled me extra snacks, and Kaisen, thanks to a last-minute nap hack from my friend, mostly slept or smiled. I nearly sobbed with relief at seeing the green customs sign and my family clustered at arrivals, wearing what has now become an inside joke, t-shirts that read Team Kaisen, unbothered, moisturized, in our lane. The last 2 weeks here have been a slow, healing blur. My parents' house smells like safety. There are aunties everywhere, my childhood friends, neighbors, my mom's colleagues, ready with stories, casseroles, and unsolicited babysitting so I can wander the garden aimlessly or, occasionally, just collapse for a nap. The tiny rental house next door is half unpacked, mostly filled with second-hand treasures my brothers found. You will need a rice cooker, trust us, and shelves already dotted with plants. It's still daunting and I flinch sometimes at any unexpected knock at the door, but peace is outpacing fear. Kaisen, for his part, has absolutely transformed, brighter, chubbier, sleeping in longer stretches. My mom's lactation wizardry persists, but Kaisen is just thriving. He has a growing fan club among the Andy squad, who have unofficially declared him king of baby yoga, and my younger brother's dog has taken on the role of canine bodyguard. Yesterday, for the first time ever, I left Kaisen for a full 2 hours with my parents and went, wait for it, out for coffee and cake by myself. I sat, and breathed, and caught up with a friend from high school. We laughed at how nobody could have possibly predicted this winding, wild story would end with me here, whole, with a beautiful baby for company. There've been hiccups. The first time a doctor here introduced herself and asked about Kaisen's birth, I froze, bracing for a repeat of the trauma Olympics. Instead, she said, placenta previa is terrifying. I'm so glad you're safe. I almost cried right there in the exam room. I now have a counselor, my mom's coworker's wife. Small towns are magical sometimes, and she's helping pick through the rubble that abuse and gaslighting leave behind. As for my ex and his family, there's now a strict channel for supervised virtual updates, hello, bi-weekly email and zip file of photos, and not a word more. His last 2 messages have been mostly about Kaisen, and, tentatively, quietly, I actually hope he seeks the counseling he says he's started. People get to grow. Sometimes you heal and meet on better terms, sometimes, healing means holding the boundary. I have forgiven nothing, but I am done letting the drama script my life. The best part? Our first real morning in the little house, just me and Kaisen, sunlight spilling bright over the borrowed bassinet, coffee in hand. I realized for the first time in over half a year, I was genuinely looking forward to tomorrow. There will be more court things, paperwork, annoying things like learning how to file taxes in 2 countries, and the inevitable pang of guilt or anger, but those are just life. They aren't my whole world anymore. I am grateful. I am healing, and with my baby in my arms, I am finally free. To everyone who followed this absurd odyssey, thank you. The internet is wild, and generous, and sometimes strangers' belief in your story is more powerful than you can ever imagine. If you're reading this and you're where I was, wishing for a miracle, keep going. There is a life on the far shore, and sometimes the current takes you exactly where you belong. Update 7. I almost want to say the dust is settling, but you know what they don't tell you? When you've lived in chaos long enough, even good dust feels weird, like stepping back onto solid ground after months at sea. And, let's not sugarcoat it, the sea has still been a little choppy, but now I'm learning when to anchor and when to ride the waves. Here's where things get wild, in that I cannot believe my life is this surreal and also this ordinary at the same time way. First off, let's talk about the house. The little rental next to my parents'? Overrun with casseroles, but I'm not complaining. It's become Grand Central for the anti-brigade, at least twice a day someone pops in with just checking on you. Vibes. The other day, I mentioned offhand wanting to do a soft reset in the living room, so cue my brothers, 3 neighbors, and 1 rogue cousin showing up armed with a truck, a toolbox, and, somehow, a disco ball. My 6-month-old now thinks strobe reflections are the pinnacle of comedy. Not in the birth plan, but definitely good for the soul. But this is the internet, so let's get to the family drama, because of course, it's still lurking. Remember the supervised, court-channeled updates? About a week after we settled in, I get a formal email from my ex. Polite, almost formal. He thanked me for the photos, asked about the sleep schedule, and then, I kid you not, asked if Kaisen was being sufficiently exposed to his culture. I read it twice. My mother, mid-spoonful of oatmeal, just said, "Oh honey, everything is culture. If he's loved, he's learning the most important part." It was her gentle shade that made me realize, this is their power move now. Guilt, from a distance, disguised as concern for heritage. It stung, yeah. But I replied truthfully, Kaisen is surrounded by people who love him, and that's all the culture he needs right now. But the real twist? Mill and Sil didn't stay quiet. Turns out, there's a Facebook support group for my, now ex, Mill's friends and extended cousins, which a mutual acquaintance invited me to peek at, strictly for giggles/sanity check. It's an echo chamber, filled with hand-wringing about motherhood lost, vague complaints about foreign influences, and, my personal favorite, a post about forgiving prodigal daughters-in-law even when they don't ask for it. They host virtual prayer circles. I honestly felt a flash of pity for them. It's like they need to create meaning out of the vacuum I left by defending myself. Their latest stunt, a series of open letters, talking about the strength of mothers who never stop fighting for their grandchildren. Guess who's never named in any of them? Kaisen's actual mother. I've stopped reading, but it shows up on my radar sometimes, like a ghost on the periphery. My brother set up one of those keyword filters that redirects any message with placenta. Kaisen, or returns straight to a folder called the Drama Llama bin. Meanwhile, my own life is quietly, audaciously moving forward. Sleep comes easier, even if it's in 3-hour chunks. Kaisen is standing assisted, doing that drunk robot wobble and cackling at the dog's tail. My parents and I have developed a routine that is, frankly, life restoring. Late night tea, early walks, window gardening with Kaisen strapped to my back. I still see my counselor, and that's become a safe place to peel away trauma like wallpaper, gently, without worrying what's underneath. My mom and I have started sharing childhood stories. She told me about how terrified she was when I was born, and we both cried, sipping tea in a quiet house while Kaisen snored between us. Then, the school thing, a surprise curveball. Out of nowhere, The local university sent me an email. A former professor remembered I was home and wondered if I'd consider coming in for a guest seminar on cross-cultural postpartum care and family systems. The invite was for next semester, but I found myself saying yes. It's weird, after all that happened, to be wanted for my expertise, not just my survival story. I have no idea yet whether I'll take it further, but the idea of standing in a room and teaching again is both thrilling and terrifying. The legal side? Still in motion, but wonderfully anticlimactic. The final custody agreement was confirmed, sole custody for me, with scheduled visits when Kaisen's old enough to interact meaningfully and only at my discretion. Thank you, blessing in lawyer form. My ex actually sent a check for child support, no stings attached, just a quiet note, for our son. Please don't be angry. It made me cry, not because I wanted his money, but because this tender, human note felt like the final proof we could both live with less anger. But I'd be lying if I said everything is easy. Nights are sometimes haunted, by memory, by what ifs, by dreams where I'm back in that old house and Kaisen is so small, and I am so tired and unseen. I still panic when the phone rings from a number I don't know. When Sil tried to send another fake friend request, using an account called Kaisen's Family, I laughed but also locked down my privacy settings so hard I barely exist online. I keep a list of boundaries on the fridge, yes, written out, because some days I need to see the rules that kept me safe. Here's where the world feels new. I have plans. Little ones, like hosting a half-birthday party for Kaisen, ridiculous hats and all, just us and the aunties. Bigger ones too, the seminar, maybe grad school next year if I can get childcare lined up. I want to travel, show Kaisen places that don't hurt. There's joy in saying next month, next year, in believing those things will come. One ridiculous, beautiful thing, Kaisen said his first syllable. Ma, garbled and drooly and perfect. My mother and I clapped and whooped until he got scared and started crying, but it was the happiest noise I've heard in ages. The ex? Mostly, I wish him peace, real peace. I want him to heal, for Kaisen's sake and his own. Sil is blocked. Mil can write as many postcards as she likes, but they're ghosts now, shadows that only have power if I turn to look. To sum up, the crazy, the mundane, the healing, the random head-exploding moments. This is what new life feels like, messier, louder, and so much lighter than I imagined.